Should dads get more paid time off? British dads are entitled to less paternity leave than any country in Europe. Now, one charity is calling for the next government to change the law and give fathers 6 paid weeks in the baby's first year. What do you make of this? Do you think it's time for more equality, or it's going to be a drain on the resources? 0207 862 2222 is the number to give us a ring. We are now joined by one of the campaigners. This is Dr. Jeremy Davis, who is Deputy CEO of Fatherhood Institute. Thank you very much for joining us. I suppose, Jeremy, if you could just lay out exactly what you're asking for from the next government.
Sure, absolutely. So, yeah, we're calling for 6 weeks well-paid leave in the baby's first year for all fathers. So that includes self-employed dads. And our preferred model would be for that to be 2 weeks of paternity leave. So at the start, when the baby's born, and then daddy month of use it or lose it parental leave that is reserved for fathers that they could take at any point in the first year.
And we're talking about 90% of your income. Is that what you're asking, or for it to be the same as the statutory maternity pay?
Yes, I mean we've gone for 6 weeks at 90% because that's equivalent to what mothers are currently entitled to. I mean, internationally, the evidence shows that in order for dads to be able to take a substantial leave, it needs to be paid at a high percentage of their earnings. So, 80, 90% is about the right level to achieve that.
What do you think that this will achieve if the next government puts it in place?
Well, I mean, it would be brilliant for children. First of all, that's the most important thing, because what you'd have then is 2 parents who are getting the chance to spend substantial time really getting to know their baby's needs and responding to them. That kind of bonding and attachment process is hugely important for children. That's how we start off the process of children learning and feeling confident with both caregivers. So it's great for children. It's great for mothers too, because it starts to break down that kind of inbuilt assumption in all our systems that it's just going to be mum who does all this stuff and shoulders all of that responsibility. So it would be good for mothers' careers. It would help reduce the gender pay gap. And then, of course, it would be great for dads too. You know, this is what dads want to do. We are human beings. We're not just workers. We want to spend time, especially in those precious early months, really doing all of the caregiving, sharing that role with our partners. And all of this, I think, it's often presented as if this is like bad news for employers. When you look at the evidence about what happens to dads when they take leave, there are all sorts of benefits at home, but there are all sorts of benefits at work too. They're much more productive. They learn a lot of skills. They learn a lot about themselves, some of the soft skills. That they can then bring back into the workplace. So, in all honesty, I think it's a win-win situation for
You are painting a very nice picture of it. I'm just wondering what the reaction has been from politicians. What have the parties said about your suggestion?
Well, the 2 main parties, not very much, to be honest. The Tories, had the opportunity to reform this system and didn't. And there's nothing in their manifesto about it at all. Labour have said that they will extend paternity leave so that it becomes a day one right, rather than there being a sort of qualifying period as there is now. So that would make it a bit more available to some dads. The Liberal Democrats have said a lot more than the two main parties. And the model that they've described in their manifesto is it's not exactly the same as ours, but it's not a million miles away from that. I noticed over the last couple of days, Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, has been talking quite a lot about the gender pay gap. Okay. So I feel like that, you know, this is an issue that is very much in the politicians' minds, even if it hasn't made it into everybody's manifestos. Okay. I think that's really where we're at.
I'm keen to talk to Rick now because you are a new dad. You've got a 1-year-old at home. Yeah. Did you take time off?
You know what? This is about as hot a topic for me as you could possibly have. Have
I touched a sore point here?
And Jeremy, I absolutely admire to bits what you are doing. I have issues with the framework of it all. It is great to get dads more involved. I took 3 months off shared parental leave.
Amazing.
So my wife could go back to work. So she did the first 6 months and I then did 3 months before we put our baby into childcare. Pretty random, rare, bizarre. The looks that I got, Storm, of people in work, like, what, you want to give up your career and you want to do that? Are you mad? Like, these are the years you need to accelerate. 1% of men take up shared parental leave. 1%. Mm-hmm. The issue I've got with this is that this is a situation where you're giving men 6 weeks off at the same time as the woman who's looking after the child. And in most cases, the mum wants to be with the baby for the first 6 months, whether they're breastfeeding or not. Most cases, the mum wants to be there.
Just to correct you on that, because it's not quite right. I believe, and Jeremy, you can correct me, it's the first 2 weeks to support the mum getting over the childbirth, and then a month later on in that year, it can be taken whenever you want.
2 people off. I get the point.
That.
No, you don't. Well, we are.
No, it's not. It's the daddy month.
6 weeks. Yeah, 6
what
weeks
I see,
off.
that 4 weeks.
Weeks
no,
off.
you can break it up. You have 2 when your wife's just been split open, where you can go around and pat her on the head and feed the baby with the whatever. Well, men can't feed the baby.
So beautifully put. They actually can if you expect.
They can.
Anyway,
indeed, anything can happen nowadays. But then the month, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Jeremy, the month can be the sticking plaster, that nightmare when the woman is trying to work out how the hell she's going to fit back into a suit to go back to work. Yeah, that's where daddy month kicks in.
Oh my gosh, seriously, I would love to be able to do this. But the idea of having 2 people off.
But you're not off. The point is I'm going for interviews and getting back on the horse.
Yeah, you've got 2 people. You've got 2 people off work. It's completely unrealistic. The company I used to work with used to give 9 months set for parental leave to the dad, no matter what the mum was doing. And in the end, the dads were like, well, hang on, I've been off for months here. I need to go back. We're not both going to stall our career.
But hang on a minute.
2 people don't need to be off to raise a child.
Say hypothetically, and let's ask Jeremy, he can adjudicate. I
don't think that's a fair adjudication.
Imagine if I was ever an employee, right? I've had my 9-month statutory, right? I've done all my lactating. I'm just getting ready to try and find a job because I've inevitably lost the job because I was pregnant and a woman, okay? And my husband, because we're still in the first year of the baby, has that 10th month as daddy month, okay, with his mum boobs.
Please let me come back on this.
All right? Yeah. And I go off to try and find a job or work, back to that job if I've still got one, and he does that buffer month. Am I right, Jeremy? Is that what the ideal is?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Right.
I mean, that is undoubtedly the model that we favour is for the dads to have this daddy month where they ideally take it solo. Because it's when you do it solo that you really get your head around.
And this is what I did. If you're doing it solo, but if you're not doing it solo, then what's the point? We've got an economy that's lagging, and the idea of having 2 parents off at the same time is absolutely madness. On the issue of the 9
we're saying. That's not what we're saying.
On the issue of the 9 months, by the way, the whole childcare system is changing.
I think it's a full year, is it not? Maternity is
a full year.
You get up to 9 months.
9 months.
Up to 9 months. The childcare system, for people having kids going forward, it's going to be completely different to people who've just had kids like we have recently, because the childcare hours are being extended down to 30 hours per week for every child from next September, 15 hours from 9 months for this one. So from 9 months old, the childcare system, and I've talked about this on the show permanently because people just don't know it's happening and it's not being publicised correctly.
Not
whatsoever.
everyone can get access.
Yes,
to
not
it. I think
available.
It's quite complicated, and not every childcare.
That's a different argument. But for most people, facilities will be available. 30 hours from next year, 15 hours from this year. So from 9 months, it gives people the opportunity to get back into the workplace and to contribute. So these 4 weeks for dads, I would argue, as someone who did it from 6 to 9 months, would be better doing it earlier than at the 9-month stage.
Right, OK, Jeremy, please stay with us. I want to take a call. I'll let you come back on that later. But Lorraine from Warwickshire, what do you think about extending paternity leave? We've got the worst in Europe. Do we not value dads?
Well, I think we definitely need to be extending paternity leave for dads. The reason I'm saying that, I actually work with new families quite a lot. I'm a newborn photographer, and I see everybody
such a lovely job.
It is wonderful. But I meet so many first-time parents where, I mean, a lot of them as well, you know, if they don't have family around them, they don't have a very close sort of support network, they really rely on dad being there. And I've had some first-time mums in tears on my sofa because dad's got to imminently go back to work and they've got no one. They've got no support and they're quite frankly terrified.
And it is incredibly stressful. Saying that, Lorraine, I think it will still feel that way for new mums quite often because that 4 weeks at the end of the year, although it would be very well received, still means that they're left for 8 months struggling.
But what we're talking about, by the way, just to put this in layman's terms, we're feeling it on the ground. Britain's birth rate in the last 10 years has crashed. We're not a replacement. Forget 2.2. Our birth rate is 1.56 per woman. Unprecedented all-time low. At the moment, I'm fighting to save my exceptional local primary school, St Saviour's in Lambeth, because Lambeth has seen, because it's a poor area, a 1/3 crash in the birth rate. This is affecting the numbers of children coming up through our system. They are our future and they're simply not arriving on the planet.
Jeremy, do you think this would encourage people to have more babies? Do you think it would be enough to encourage people?
I mean, to be honest, I mean, I'd like to make the point. First of all, our model is not prescriptive about when the fathers would be able to take the leave. I would also like to say that by international standards, even the 6 months is not generous. You know, there are plenty of countries where both mothers and fathers have access to much longer and well-paid leave than what we're talking about. So I'm not suggesting that 6 weeks for dads is a panacea that will sort out everything. It would be an awful lot better than what we've got now. I think families are struggling, and I do think this feeds into people's decision-making about, you know, whether to have a child in the first place, maybe whether to have more than one, you know, having had the experience of struggling and the cost of living and mortgage rates and all of that, combined with lack of access to leave. And this sense for the mothers of being this kind of having this solo responsibility for juggling, you know, home and work life, and being constrained by a system which forces you into that situation and doesn't give you as a family a choice, really, about who's going to do what.
It's certainly going in the right direction if you're looking for more equality in that area. Keith from East Sussex, what's your view when it comes to extending paternity leave?
Hey, if you're self-employed, what do? You go to work.
I mean, yes, and if you're a self-employed woman, it's very difficult as well.
No, self-employed woman. But when I was a youngster, I'm 57 now. When I was a youngster, I went to work. I didn't have any time off whatsoever. My wife was out of work for about a week looking after the child, and then she was straight back into taking the baby to work with you.
But Keith, I can actually beat that, Keith. I can beat you.
We had a lot of things to pay. We had a lot of things to pay for.
I hear you. I absolutely hear you, Keith, but I think that's why the 90% pay is crucially important. And I just want to go back to Jeremy because the self-employed issue is a really interesting one.
Yeah.
Now, what do you do when somebody is self-employed? How can you make sure that the paternity leave is still paid at such a high level to encourage men to use it?
I mean, what we're suggesting for now, and again, I'm not claiming it's the perfect system, but for simplicity's sake, do the same as we do for self-employed mothers. So, which is there is a version of paid maternity leave.
You have to
called,
apply for it slightly differently.
Maternity allowance. So, make the equivalent thing available to fathers too. Self-employed dads at the moment get zero.
Keith, quick question.
It's as if you're not a father at all.
Keith, quick question. Would you have liked to have taken some paternity time and had some time with your children in the first year?
I put clothing on the bank. I fed them.
But would you like to have done that as well as spend time with them?
I did have time with them in the evenings.
Yes, but more time with them to take the full responsibility of parenting them for a little while.
When they're that young and you're self-employed, you have to juggle both sides. I don't look for benefits. Why do people always looking for benefits to get away from looking after their own kids?
Maternity pay, I don't think a lot of women would consider that a benefit. They are full on working, I can tell you that much.
The benefit, if the dad could take it as well, then you've got two people at home when one could be working.
It's not necessarily two people off at the same time. The mum could be working during that.
And can we just make it clear, Keith, that as the person who has to carry the baby and give birth to the baby, it's even worse as a self-employed woman. The way I got around it, how the hell was I going to fund this? And I felt scared for my job at the same time as well. I sold the idea of, could I have a home birth? I sold it to a TV company like they did in the war and give birth without pain relief at home. And that is how I funded. And people said, that's me.
You're kidding.
I got 1,800 quid for making that film. 1,800
funded your maternity leave?
It certainly did, because I was getting 100 quid a week. And I don't regret it for 1 minute, because actually it really encouraged women to have home births. And people said to me, oh, that's the wonderful midwife that came to my house.
All these memories flooding back for you.
And everyone's, and I gave birth, I just squatted on the loo and it shot out. It was brilliant.
It shot out.
The Mara. And people said, are you going to put the money into a special account? And I was like, no. I'm going to put the money into my mortgage and spend it on nappies.
Yeah.
It's about survival.
Money at that point is a really tough topic, I think, for a lot of people. They really, really struggle. It's an interesting idea. It's also very interesting that the two main parties haven't taken it up quite as enthusiastically, Jeremy, as perhaps you'd like. Because
there isn't the money for it, essentially.
But can we afford not to, would be another question.
Can we afford to not do a lot of things? I think it's a great idea. If we could do this, and and there was a load of money in the basket, great. But there isn't.
We ain't having babies, Rick. In the future, who's going to wipe your bot when you're old? We ain't having babies.
Right, Jeremy,
it's a problem throughout Europe. That's happening, not just
I'm going to have to wrap this part up. I would love to talk about this.
I love Jeremy. Can I marry him in another life?
In another life, I'm sure you'd have to get his consent. Jeremy, there's a marriage proposal there. The final word to you before we have to wrap up this point.
I'd just like to point out to some research done by some good friends of ours at an organisation called Pregnant Then Screwed.
Yes,
they
brilliant.
estimated that by introducing 6 weeks, which would cost around 1.6 billion, between 1.6 and 2 billion pounds a year, their estimate is that that would bring about 23 billion pound to the UK economy. So it's sometimes I think we need to make these decisions. Yes, there's a cost, but look at the benefits too.
Jeremy, thank you very much for joining us for that discussion.